glasses in all that cow. Then I could feel the vision beating up in all this silver. And then there were colours like nobody had ever viddied before. And then I could viddy like a group of statues a long, long, long way off, that was like being pushed nearer and nearer and nearer, all lit up by very bright light geometrical messages. That rang a bell somehow. This other mooch said, "You're too young for that, son. Why, you've got everything in front of you." "Yes," I said, bitter, like a pair of false crudies. This mag-reading Vec said, "Shh," again, looking up this time, and something clocked for both of us. I pitied who it was. He said, "Real grumpy. I never forget a shape. By God, I never forget the shape of anything. By God, you young swine, I've got you now." Crystallography, that was it. That was what he'd been taking away from the biblio that time. False teeth crunched up real horror show, platties torn off, his books ras-razzed, all about crystallography. I thought I had best get out of here, real scary brothers. But this starry old mooge was on his feet, screeching like Bazoomi to all the starry old coffers at the gazettas round the walls, and to them dozing over mags at the tables. "We have him," he screeched, "the poisonous young swine who ruined the books on crystallography. Rare books, books not to be obtained ever again, anywhere." This had a terrible mad shoom about it, as though this old Vec was really off his Gulliver. "A prize specimen of the cowardly, brutal young," he screeched, "here in our midst and at our mercy. He and his friends beat me and kicked me and thumped me. They stripped me and tore out my teeth. They laughed at my blood and my moans. They kicked me off home, dazed and naked." All this wasn't quite true, as you know, brothers. He had some platties on. He hadn't been completely nagoy. I screeched back. "That was over 2 years ago. I've been punished since then. I've learned my lesson. See over there, my pictures in the papers." "Punishment, eh?" said one, starry like ex-soldier type. "You lot should be exterminated, like so many noisome pests. Punishment indeed." All right, I said. "Everybody's entitled to his opinion. Forgive me all. I must go now." And I started to itty out of this mesto of Bazoomi old men. Aspirin, that was it. You could snuff it on 100 aspirin. Aspirin from the old drugstore. But the crystallography Vec screeched, "Don't let him go. We'll teach him all about punishment. The murderous young pig. Get him." And, believe it, brothers, or two, the other Vesh, 2 or 3 starry daughters, about 90 years old apiece, grabbed me with their trembly old rockers, and I was like made sick by the vaunt of old age and disease which came from these near-dead mooches. The Crusoe a reading room. But nobody took any notice. So the attendant Vec said, "Right, I shall phone the police." So I screeched, and I never thought I would ever do that in all my Disney. Yes, 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 do that. Protect me from these old madmen. I noticed that the attendant Vec was not too anxious to join in the threatening and rescue me from the rage and madness of these starry Vec's claws. He just scattered off to his office, or whatever the telephone was. Now, these old men were panting a lot now, and I felt I could just flick at them and they would all fall over. But I just let myself be held, very patient, by these starry Rugers, my glasses closed, and feel the feeble toe jokes on my litso. Also Slushy, the panting, breathy old colossus, screeching, young swine, young murderer, hooligan, thug, kill him. Then I got such a real, painful toe job on the nose that I said to myself, to hell, and then I opened my glasses up and started to struggle to get free, which was not hard, brothers, and I tore off, screeching, to the sort of hallway outside the reading room. But these starry Avengers still came shelm and whip to keep order. I said, "Oh, no." Surprise, eh? And old Tim came out with the old cuff I remembered so horror show. Ha, ha, ha. "It's impossible," I said. "It can't be so. I don't believe it." "Evidence of the old glassies," grinned Billy Boy. "Nothing up our sleeves. No magic, Droog. A job for two who are now of job age. The police." "You're too young," I said. "Much too young. They don't make roses of magics of your age." "Was young," went old Millicent Dim. "I could not get over it, brothers. I really could not. That's what we was, young Droogie. And you, it was that was always the youngest. And here now we are." "I still can't believe it," I said. Then Billy Boy, Roz Billy Boy, that I couldn't get over, said to this young Millicent that was like holding on to me, and that I did not know. "More good would be done, I think, Rex, if we doled out a bit of the old summary. Boys will be boys, as always was. No need to go through the old station routine. This one here has been up to his old tricks, as we can well remember, though you, of course, can't. He has been attacking the aged and defenseless, and they have properly been retaliating. But we must have our say in the state's name." "What is all this?" I said, not able hardly to believe my oogos. "It was them that went for me, brothers. You're not on their side, and can't be. You can't be, Tim. It was a feck we fellied with once in the old days, trying to get his own malinky bit of revenge after all this long time." "Long time is right," said Tim. "I don't remember them days too horror show. Don't call me Tim no more either. Officer, call me." "Enough is remembered though," Billy Boy kept nodding. He was not so fatty as he had been. "Naughty little magics, handy with cutthroat Britvas. These must be kept under." And they took me in a real strong grip and like walked me out of the biblio. There was a Millicent patrol car waiting outside, and this feck they called Rex was the driver. They like toe-chugged me into the back of this auto, and I couldn't help feeling it was all really like a joke, and that Tim, anyway, would pull his shelm off his Gulliver and go, "Ho, ho, ho." But he didn't. I said, trying to fight the strack inside me. "And old Pete. What happened to old Pete? It was sad about Georgie," I said. I slushied all about it. "Pete. Oh yes, Pete," said Tim. "I seem to remember the name. I could pity we were driving out of town." I said, "Where are we supposed to be going?" Billy Boy turned round from the front to say, "It's light still. A little drive into the country, all winter bare, but lonely and lovely. It is not officially. Here were houses, and there was a drinking misto, and right at the end of the village there was a Malinky cottage on its oddie knocky, and I could viddy its name shining on the gate. Home, it said. I was all dripping wet with this icy rain, so that my platties were no longer in the height of fashion, but real miserable and pathetic. And my luscious glory was a wet tangle galley mess, all spread over my gulliver. And I was sure there were cuts and bruises all over my lidso, and a couple of my zoobies sort of joggled loose when I touched them with my tongue or yazzik. And I was sore all over my plot and very thirsty, so that I kept opening my rot to the cold rain, and my stomach growled grrr all the time, with not having had any pistia since morning, and then not very much. Oh, my brothers. Home, it said, and perhaps here would be something to help. I opened the gate and sort of slithered down the path, the rain turning to ice, and then I knocked gentle and pathetic on the door. No vec came, so I knocked a malinky bit longer and louder, and then I heard the shoom of Nogas coming to the door. Then the door opened, and a male Golos said, "Yes, what is it?" "Oh," I said, "please help. I've been beaten up by the police and just left to die on the road. Oh, please give me a drink of something and a sit by the fire. Please, sir." The door opened full then, and I could viddy warm light and a fire going crackle, crackle within. "Come in," said this vec, "whoever you are. God help you, you poor victim. Come in and let's have a look at you." So I staggered in, and it was no big act I was putting on, brothers. I really felt done and finished. This kind vec put his ruckers round my pletchos and pulled me into this room where the fire was. And of course I knew right away now where it was and why home on the gate looked so familiar. I looked at this vec, and he looked at me in a kind sort of way, and I remembered him well now. Of course, he would not remember me, for in those carefree days I and my so-called droogs did all our bullshit dratzing and fillying and crasting in maskies, which were real horror show disguises. He was a shortish vec in middle age, 30, 40, 50, and he had utchkies on. "Sit down by the fire," he said, "and I'll get you some whiskey and warm water. Dear, 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 somebody has been beating you up." And he gave a tender look at my Gulliver and Litso. "The police," I said, "the horrible, ghastly police." "Another victim," he said, sighing. "A victim was not let on, though, for I needed help and kindness now. Those horrible Krasny Brajnis in that terrible white Nesto had done that to me, making me need help and kindness now, and forcing me to want to give help and kindness myself if anybody would take it. Here we are, then, said this back, returning. He gave me this hot, stimulating glassful of to beat, and it made me feel better. And then he cleaned up these cuts on my lid so. Then he said, "You have a nice hot bath. I'll draw it for you. And then you can tell me all about it over a nice hot supper, which I'll get ready while you're having the bath." Oh, my brothers, I could have wept at his kindness, and I think he must have pitied the old tears in my glasses, for he said, "There, there, there," patting me on the plecho. Anyway, I went up and had this hot bath, and he brought in pyjamas and an overgown for me to put on, all warmed by the fire. Also, a very worn pair of duffels. And now, brothers, though I was aching and full of pains all over, I felt I would soon feel a lot better. I iddied downstairs and pitied that in the kitchen he had set the table with knives and forks and a fine big loaf of gleb. Also a bottle of prima sauce. And soon he served out a nice fry of eggy eggs and lumticks of ham and bursting sausages and big bolshy mugs of hot, sweet, milky chai. It was nice sitting in there in the warm, eating, and I found I was very hungry, so that after the fry I had to eat lumtic after lumtic of gleb and butter spread with strawberry jam out of a bolshy great pot. "A lot better," I said. "How can I ever repay you?" "I think I know who you are," he said. "If you are who I think you are, then you've come, my friend, to the right place. Wasn't that your picture in the papers this morning? Are you the poor victim of this horrible new technique? If so, then you have been sent here by Providence. My heart goes out to you, poor, poor boy." Brothers, I could not get a slovo in, though I had my rot wide open to answer his questions. "You're not the first to come here in distress," he said. "The police are fond of bringing their victims to the outskirts of this village, but it's providential that you, who are also another kind of victim, should come here. Perhaps then you've heard of me." I had to be very careful. I said, "I have heard of A Clockwork Orange. I have not read it, but I have heard of it." choose ceases to be a man. That's what the Jarl said, sir, I said. The prison chaplain, I mean. Did he? Did he? Of course he did. He'd have to, wouldn't he? Being a Christian. Well, now then, he said, still wiping the same plate he'd been wiping 10 minutes ago. We shall have a few people in to see you tomorrow. I think you can be used, poor boy. I think that you can help dislodge this overbearing government. To turn a decent young man into a piece of clockwork should not, surely, be seen as any triumph for any government, save one that boasts of its repressiveness. He was still wiping the same plate. I said, Sir, you're still wiping that same plate. I agree with you, sir, about boasting. The government seems to be very boastful. Oh, he said, like videoing this plate for the first time, and then putting it down. I'm still not too handy, he said, with domestic chores. My wife used to do them all, and leave me to my writing. Your wife, sir, I said. Has she gone and left you? I really wanted to know about his wife, remembering very well. Yes, left me, he said, in a loud and bitter colossus. She died, you see. She was brutally raped and beaten. The shock was very great. It was in this house. His ruggers were trembling, holding a wiping up cloth. In that room next door. I have had to steel myself to continue to live here. But she would have wished me to stay where her fragrant memory still lingers. Yes, yes, yes. Poor little girl. I vidied all clearly, my brothers, what had happened that far off noche, and pitying myself on that job.